already, and that was regulated by the FDA. Now think of all the stuff that isn't, That's pretty deep. That's a lot to think about, You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where did Lyme disease come from? Nobody has any clue, but it's been proven it didn't occur naturally.
There is a clue about that.
Go ahead, Richard.
Well, that Lyme disease came out of Laboratory 257.
Right. It didn't occur naturally.
Right, exactly.
And that's what else we're going to have to be facing, too, because, when they're in the process, you got to understand the whole concept behind what's coming down is, in essence, what we are all basically aware of is they want to create a utopia, one world government. And in order to do that, they're going to have to eliminate a lot of the population of the earth. So on top of worrying about food and water and whatever have you, we're also going to have to face the plagues that they're going to be letting loose. And they're coming. They've already demonstrated that.
Well, one of the things that they have to consider the population reduction very carefully, because in Europe, when there was a population reduction, it occurred naturally because of a famine or a plague. And what actually happened in Europe was that they lost 30 to 50% of their population, and the royalty or the affluent of Europe lost their labor force, so they had to go out into the fields. They don't want to do that. They don't want to get their hands dirty. So, it presents a problem. Mm-hmm. It's not unsurmountable. They could eliminate, authority figures and put them out in the fields, but there's a learning curve involved there, and there's also an adaptation period physically to get used to that kind of work. So, but I've read what it says on the Georgia stones, and if they're talking about going from 6.8 billion to 550 million, 100 million, these people are crazy. There's not going to be anybody left to populate who's going to run the power plants? Who's going to run the sewage treatment plants?
They're not concerned about that. All they're concerned about is having good little slaves that are going to do their bidding.
Yeah.
You can watch the sci-fis and basically get an idea of how this is all going to play out. I don't know how many movies I've watched where it depicted the very poor live outside these affluent, guarded cities. Mm-hmm. And that's where the elitists come in at, these world power brokers. They're going to be running these guarded cities, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15 or 100 of them. You're going to have the very rich and the very poor. That's the way they're playing it out. And the very poor will be the slaves of the very rich. They'll be expendable, disposable, utilized for whatever. And that's what the whole life scheme of their existence is going to be. So we have to basically try to one-up them in that aspect and start getting educated, start pulling together, start forming groups now to be able to stave off what these people are going to be doing to us, because they're going to be hitting us with plagues, nukes, armies, you name it. We're going to get hit with everything you could possibly think.
You're absolutely right, and I know that. But one thing I revert back to history, because this is history repeating itself. This happened in China. The ruling elite wanted to get rid of all of their competition, and that competition was the educated of the Chinese people. So what did they do? They got the students to come in and execute these people and put them on trial and put them in jail. It was called the Cultural Revolution. If anybody had an education, they were suspect. They were the target. And it wasn't a pretty thing. Sons were going after their fathers, and neighbors were going after their neighbors and stuff. So, and all you needed was an education. That was it. That was it to be condemned.
Okay, we have a question from one of our listeners. This is Mike in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and Mike writes, how would a single person with a disability on a fixed income survive when the worst happens?
I wish there was a simple answer for that, but in reality there isn't. My only suggestion would be gain as much knowledge as you possibly can and start communicating with others you're concerned. Somewhere out there you're bound to find somebody that you can align yourself with and work together to accomplish some kind of preparedness.
And it usually should be some sort of a relative. If it's not a relative by blood, it should be a relative by marriage. And if you can't do that, go after your support system and say, hey, this is going to be more than just a Thursday night chat at the local church. This better be collectively cooperative, or we're all going to pay for it.
Right.
That's an excellent idea.
And it's not a question of congregating every Thursday. Those the people that are blind or the deaf or the physically incapable are going to have to move in together in an immediate neighborhood. They're going to have to be clusters or ghettos of these people. And I don't use that word ghetto as a negative connotation. It's a collection of ability or like-minded people who have a goal in mind.
Very true.
That's the thing that I've been really concerned about with a lot of people out there. What happens with the disabled? Who's actually going to take care of them? I mean, I've seen it where families have disowned individuals like us because they don't want to hear this stuff. They won't have anything to do with us. So if you're a disabled person and you go to your family and you say, well, I have knowledge that, we're going to be facing a catastrophe sometime in the future, and, I want to form something with all of you to get prepared for it. The average person's just sitting there saying, you're a nutcase. Who are you listening to? Right. What kind of people are you hanging around with? Or go get prepared with those people. Don't bother us because it'll never happen here. Mm-hmm. But, that idea about the group, if he has a group meeting, jump up. Tell it, like it is. Get the knowledge in your head of what's going on behind the scenes versus what we're being fed by the mainstream media, and demand for those people to start learning this stuff and make preparations.
And the best you can hope for is to survive as long as you can with the information. If you've got the information, or you've got a talent or something, then you're of value to somebody. This is not my language, this is their language. If you have no talent, you have no ambition, you have no nothing, then you become what they call a useless eater. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody going to be able to help you. Nobody willing to help you.
Yeah, because as individuals on our own, we're weighed down enough as it is. There's a lot of capable people out there, and primarily the ones that don't want to hear this stuff. They're going to end up being victims because they chose not to listen. They didn't want to hear the sky is falling, so when the sky falls, it's going to fall on them first.
And you really have to keep this in the back of your mind. This is not a ruthless, heartless type of thing. This is a military mentality. What you do is to prepare for the worst and hope and pray for the best.
Right.
And that's a military. Every army in the world does exactly that. They prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that's exactly what we're talking about now, and it's exactly what we hope will transpire in the future. But if the worst happens, you can't waste your time with sympathy. You can't waste your time with empathy. You got to waste your time with survival. 100% of your effort has to be channeled into survival.
Yeah, but you don't wait until it happens to get the knowledge about surviving.